I'm Judd Myers.
I'm Scott Tipton.
Welcome to Blast Off.
Hey everybody, I'm Judd. This is another BlastOffComics.com interview session for our podcast and our YouTube channel. Thank you all for joining us. We've come a long way. We're here in France. Yes, France. And we're here interviewing some of the greatest writers and artists of comic books, graphic novels, albums here. We visited Humanoids Publishing, which is a wonderful place. Today, we're going to be spending some time in his own personal office with Xavier Dorison.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Xavier Dorison to all of us in Hollywood. But thank you very much for inviting us into your home. Thank you for giving us some intimate time in the place where all the work happens. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you for coming here.
What we normally do, format-wise, on our show is we start with what we feel is the most important question in any interview for our purposes, and that is, what is the first comic book you ever remember reading that meant something to you?
I'm living in France, and I am French,
yes.
But and I swear it's the truth. The first comics I've read was American, and when I was young, we had in France a journal, sort of newspaper, which name was Strange. But when I was kid, I said Strange, okay? And because, of course, I didn't speak English. And in this Strange, we had Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Daredevil. And that was my first comics.
And these were reprints.
Let me show you.
Yes, please.
That was my first comics.
Okay, this wasn't actually the first one, but these were the first ones that...
For me, yeah.
Okay.
One of the first ones.
Okay,
yeah. It's pretty old.
That's what that is. Oh, yeah, plus you have Spidey Super Stories on the back here.
Yeah.
These are actually some of my favorite comics when I was a kid. So, and a Hulk Thing fight. That's pretty amazing. That's a great
and
book.
sometimes these covers were made in France.
Right.
I mean, the content, of course, was an American original.
Yes.
But the cover was made in France with a French artist.
Can I open it?
Yes, of course.
I promise you I know how.
Yeah.
So these were reprints. This is from 1980, this one. So these were late 70s reprints. You got Daredevil, Gene Colan artwork, which is pretty wonderful. You've got some 70s Spidey, Esposito Spidey. And you have Jack of Hearts. I mean, you're deep in France as a kid reading Jack of Hearts. That's great. That's wonderful. Do you remember a story that you read that stuck with you? Like that? Or was it just, I just remember reading these?
I'm going to say, I'm going to tell that in French.
Okay.
Mais la première histoire vraiment.
The first comic I really remember reading was a story with
with Iron Man.
Iron Man fighting a knight with a death face on a horse with
A flying horse, yeah.
Flying horse.
Flying.
It was full of imagination and full of dreams, and I may have read that 2,000 times.
Wow. What, do you have a copy of it? Is that something you still have, or is it?
Yeah, but not in this office.
Yeah. No, I don't need to see it. I just know
I
still
still
have it.
Yeah.
There's touchstones for everything. I call them power totems.
Yeah. Because en fait, ça a effectivement un rôle.
That's the importance that I wanted to keep is the energy of these books, especially the energy of the childhood.
Yeah.
And
On pourrait dire une sorte de nostalgie en fait.
kind of
Nostalgia.
Yeah. Ouais, c'est. I try to keep this nostalgia, and to keep, this part of dream, and this part of, typically, American writing, very dynamic, very, everything is done, it's very simple and everything goes very fast. And I try now to mix these two energies and a sort of European, I would say, culture or a specific way of considering, word and things. So it is exactly the mix I try to reach, between, this energy and what I am now, where I'm living now, and when I see from here, from France.
When you were a boy, did you have friends who also read comics? Did they read more French comics, or did they also love these and you traded them and talked about it, or were you alone?
No, it was very very famous in France. This strange, young guys like me, they young boys, they really liked it. And later, I discovered some major French artists, like if I speak about writers like Jean Van Damme, and then I tried to make my own mix between Stan Lee, Chris Claremont, and Jean Van Damme.
Yeah. And did your parents welcome you reading, and they didn't have a problem with you reading comic books, or?
No, they didn't have any problem, but in my family there was absolutely no comics. It's in France in the 70s, grown-up people or adults, they did not read comics. It was considered here only for children, and
in America too.
In America, it's funny because 1 month ago I was in Japan, and I was talking with my translator, and this lady was maybe 60 or 70, and she read manga since she was not 4, but maybe 5 or 6 years old, and now she's still reading comics, and it's I find great to see someone that old loving manga and all comics, because it's normal for them. So now in my family there wasn't any comics, and they didn't understand it, but they had no problem with it.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. I mean, for me, the reason why I got my first job in a comic book store was because my father didn't want me to read comic books. Oh. It was because he gave me allowance. I don't know what they refer to it here when you get a little bit of money every week. Yeah. The parents give you, we call it allowance. So
allowance, okay.
Give me my few bucks every week, and I would ride my bike to the comic book store in California in the 1,000-degree weather. And I would go to the comic book store and spend all my money. And then I would ride home and spread them out on my bed, and oh my gosh. And I made the mistake of talking to my father about it. And he saw all these comic books. He said, "How much of your money are you spending on these things?" And I said, "All of it." And he said, "I want you to spend your money on something else." And I said, "I don't want anything else." He said, "Go spend it with your friends." And I said, "I don't have any friends." and he said, "Well, if you keep spending money on these comic books, I'm not going to give you any more allowance." And I said, "So don't give me any more allowance." And that was the end of the money from my father. And I used to ride my bike to the comic book store, and I would read my way through the comic book racks every week. I would read, and then I'd get on my bike and I would go home. And then one Saturday I went, and the manager of the store said, "Hey kid, you ever going to buy anything? You read all my comic books." I said, "No, I don't have any money." And he said, "You know how to bag and board?" I said, "Of course." Took me in the back room, sat me on a milk crate, and he said, "Bag and board till I tell you to stop."
Bag and board?
Bag and board, like the comic book.
Oh, okay.
You put the comic book sleeves, and I did that all day until my hands were... and then he closed the gate of the store and said, "Now pick out your comic books till I tell you to stop." Wow. And I did. And then he said, "See you next week." And that was my first job in a comic book store. And my father caught me with all the comics in my room. And he said, "Where did these all come? We thought I stole them." I said, "I got a job." He called the comic book store. He said, "My son is here. He has all these comics. He says he has a job with you." And manager of the store said, "Yeah, best employee I ever had." It was the start of the tension between me and my father.
It's a great story.
Yeah. Well, the best part of the story is that about 20 years later, I bought that store.
No.
That's my childhood comic book store.
But it's true that when I remember, and I'm sure you were exactly the same, but when we were, 8 or 10, and we really lived this story. I mean, we could read it 10 or 20 times because we were really living these stories. And I sometimes I'm sorry because I can't reach such investment in story and read them now, but this pleasure, this energy is still helping us to to move forward and sometimes to write. I really feel like giving this pleasure to the readers, even if I'm not today capable to feel it at 100% as I felt it when I was a child.
Right, but what you don't know is that there's kids that are getting your books at comic book stores and riding on their bikes and looking and getting caught in it, and their parents are going, "What are you reading?"
What you're reading? Oh, maybe today that you're reading something, it's great. Anything. He can read. It's marvelous.
So you're a kid, you're reading comic books. I have to imagine that certainly was for me in the 70s. The idea was you grow up, you go to school, you get a good job, and, you go to work. Mm-hmm. Now, for you, it may shock people to know that your background was in banking. You went to business school.
Yeah.
That was where you ended up.
Exactly.
Is that just something that you felt you had to do? Was it something that you did for your parents? Was it something that did you know that you wanted to be a writer for comics, for film?
In fact, in my family and in my social environment, mm-hmm. there was no artists. No one was working in culture. My parents, that I love, but are hairdressers. Mm-hmm. So nobody was writing, nobody was painting, nothing. So I wanted to do some business because I really like it. I found it very interesting, and I really choose what I want to do. And to me, it was just impossible to imagine one day to write, because guys like Chris Claremont or Stanley, they were only gods. They were living in a sort of Olympus. Olympus.
Yes,
they were not real.
Yeah.
It's like it was exactly as if you had said to me, tomorrow you would be the next Tom Cruise or Steven Spielberg. They are not real. In fact, they don't exist.
Yeah.
And but I really I really liked to write. And when I was at school, for instance, I was very, very often bored. Yes, bored. And every time I'm bored, I'm trying to imagine stories, and I'm closing my eyes or I'm closing my mind, and I'm living here, with stories and imagination. I wrote stories, but just for me. And one day I am in my business school, and I'm meeting another student, and he told me, I'm in this business school, but I really want to become a drawer, and I am in this business school to please my parents. And that was not my case, but he was. He wanted to please his parents, but my goal is to become a drawer. And I said him, yeah, it's fine, because I like to write stories. So if you want, we could imagine, but it's a kind of fantasy. Write comics together. Why not? And then we decided really to do it and to work very hard. I mean, he was working very hard for the drawing, and I tried to learn how to write, because I really felt that it was a job. I mean, that it is a kind of a professional activity. So I had to understand how to write a scene, how to write a dialogue, and so on and so on. So, but there was no classes, no books, or very few books. I read many comics and I was taking notes, or I was watching movies and also taking notes. I wanted to understand how it works. And then we made together, with Alex Alice, this first story, the Third Testament. And of course, all publisher told us it's very new, this mix between adventure and middle age and, esotericism. Mm-hmm. It would never work. Okay. So, but we try again and again. And one day, one publisher, so Glénat in France, and they says, why not? So, okay, let's try to publish it. And we were lucky because it was a major success in France. Mm. And 2 or 3 days later, so, my wife was working a lot. We had a child, and I couldn't work hard during the day and writing at night and weekend. So I decided to resign and to try to live with a script and script writing.
How long after the publication of that book, Third Testament, did you leave your job? How long did it take?
I don't recall, but maybe 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So I was in a bank for 4 years. I was at Nestlé for 1 year and Barclays for 4 years.
How many volumes was Third Testament? Was it
4?
4 volumes.
4 volumes, yeah.
And for American listeners and viewers, one of the things that's very difficult to understand unless you come here and you really, really experience it. I've been going around to stores here and meeting all the owners and things. And it's a revelation for me. This is the bizarro American retail environment. It's the opposite. Everything is the opposite. Everything is returnable. Everything, the bookstores work together. The industry is all about, price. The price is the price. There's no discount. Everybody says this is the price. America is the opposite of that. It's this cutthroat, crush each other. But for the volumes of books, I went into a store yesterday, and in American comic book stores, which I know you've been in, you go through the back issues. The back each individual issue, monthlies. Here, they're hardcovers. You go through all of the bins, and it's oversized hardcovers. Thousands of them everywhere. It's a format that we weren't even familiar with until 10 years ago. In my store, I told this story a couple days ago, 2003. Humanoids had just started to have books in stores in America. I was the first store in Los Angeles to take the books and make a display. But they were oversized books. And back then, nobody knew what to do with them because shelves were only a certain height in America. So they didn't fit into the shelves. So people didn't know what to do with it. Only now, with oversized books and small books and all that, and the shelves being different, are Americans open to it. But here, the idea of 4 hardcovers encompassing the entire story. Here's the question. How long does it take from one hardcover to the other hardcover? Meaning, the story's done. The books are being published. 4 volumes. From 1 to 4, how long does it take before the story is done, that the reader finishes the story?
First of all, to write it, write the 4 stories. In fact, because I wanted to write the 4 stories because before doing the script, it was maybe 2 years. I was working with Alex Alice during 2 years to write the 4 stories, the full story.
Right.
And then he needed 1 year to draw the 46 pages. 1 year, to draw the 46 pages. But to draw, to ink, make the colors, and every panel has a lot of details, a lot of it's very détaillé.
Yeah.
And I think for the 4 chapters, for the 4 graphic novel, it has taken maybe 6 or 7 years
to be
complete.
It's complete, and then you give it to the publisher.
No. In fact, we give one. It's one by one.
Okay.
So, the first, there are 4 chapters. Okay, so 4 comic books, 4 graphic novels.
Right.
These 4 graphic novels are one story, one big story, like 4 act stories.
And how many pages per?
The first was 46, and second was 52, and then 60, and then 70.
So in America, the average comic is 22 pages.
Yes, I know.
And the average graphic novel is between 5 to 7 issues, meaning 22 pages each.
Yeah, it's very different. I know. Last year I worked with Terry Dodson, and
on the red one.
Yeah, and of course for American reader, it's very unusual. Yeah, to wait so long between 2 comics.
Unless it's Frank Miller or Alan Moore, then everybody expects, all right, we're gonna wait a long time for this.
Yeah. And so with Terry, we did maybe 100 pages with 4 issues, and we still have to do 2 issues. And so I'm so sorry for my American readers to wait so much. But problem is that in France, writers read many different series, and sometimes you have to change, and then you can finish right now. So it's pretty different. Pretty different.
I'm going to come back to the red one because I have a question.
Okay,
or
later.
two about
Okay.
that. But just to give it some context, so from the first day that the first volume came out to the last volume came into the store that somebody came in and finally got to read the end, how long did they wait?
6 years.
So it starts. The first volume is published, and 6 years later, the 4th volume.
Yeah,
is published.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean for maybe 2 or 3 months approximately, but yeah, that's it.
All of you American viewers should stop complaining. Seriously, oh my God, the investment that you have to have into a story is outrageous. In America now, Humanoids is putting out books. They're completed. So to Americans, it's all new to them, but it's all done in one. They don't have to wait.
Yeah.
They just pick up this beautiful collection, and it's all there.
Yeah.
And to them, it's new. To you, it was 10 years of hard labor.
yeah, it's hard labor, and sometimes I like to wait. It's not always a problem to wait. Yeah. For instance, one key of pleasure is to wait. And not to have it always right now.
Yeah.
For instance, when I read comics that I really like, I appreciate this moment between the last pager, the cliffhanger. So wow, what happened next? And this feeling, what happened next, is a good feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a kind of frustration.
Yeah.
And I'm not masochist.
Masochist, yes.
Yeah, absolutely not. But I think it's a good thing to live with frustration, especially when you have a good story and you hope have a new one as good as the first you read. This pleasure to imagine what's coming, and this pleasure to hope. It's also great. I don't want to make my readers wait. It's not a purpose. I don't really consider it as a major problem. On the contrary,
it's very much like cinema. I mean, for you thinking that way as a also a filmmaker, screenwriter. We were talking about the delay between one story and another, how long it takes before books come out. Obviously, for people in Europe, for readers in Europe, there's so many titles that they jump from one to another, and they can put their focus on other things, and all the while still be frustrated with you. But you were in your finance job while you were working on these books, and a couple of years into it still. I remember talking to Robert Kirkman, and he was telling me about Walking Dead and what it was like before Walking Dead became something. Because the first issue was not this runaway success. It was, nobody even knew what it was. And he was working in a furniture store. And so if he completed, he had 8 hours a day. If he completed all of his work, he could go in the back room and just write, which is what he would do.
Mm-hmm.
So Walking Dead came out. And first issue, okay. Second issue, everybody started discovering it. And it started to grow and grow and grow. And they started to ask him to go to conventions. And they would say, hey, we want you to come here. No, I can't. I'm working on it. And he kept saying no. It was because he still worked in the furniture store. And they asked him, when they found out, why are you still working? And he said, I don't know. What if it doesn't work out? What if people stop reading it? I have to feed my family. So just in case. Mm. And this went on for a while. So it's fascinating to me when creators make the choice. Finally, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I have friends who made the same choice, and they came. For instance, they were living, in Angoulême or other French, mm-hmm. and they mm-hmm. came to Paris with not a euro, and no place to live, but they were here only to draw in general, to draw comics. Mm-hmm. My choice was not so brave because I had a job, and in this job, when I resigned, they told me, if later you want to come back, you are welcome. So I was not that brave, and I had my wife and my family were supporting me.
Yes,
and so the major change was more to be in a Monday morning, you are alone in your apartment. There is absolutely no noise, perfect silence. Only your fingers on the keyboard, and then you have to find ideas if you want to to make money. And that's very special, because when you have another work, like in a furniture shop or in a bank, I think that you use this jail, I would say. It could be a nice jail, and I had a very nice jail. But you are using this jail and the walls of these jails to as energy for your imagination. And the more you are prisoners, the more you find ideas. And what I want to say is not that I want my former life, but that I think that when you are when you don't have a lot of time, when you just have 1 hour or 2 hours, you are very efficient, and this moment is pure pleasure. And when it's your work, you have to find ideas every day, not only when you feel like to, not only when it's fun, or when ideas are coming alone. Mm-hmm. Now, when it's your work, you have to find them every day. So I think so. It was not that brave, and I've discovered that I love my work, but it's gonna be a passion has turned into passion and work.
So let's talk about the mechanics. Called mechanic. You get up, you have breakfast, whatever, with your family. When do you go to work? Is it that specific?
Yeah. What was at the beginning very hard for me is not to have des repères. Je sais pas dire ça. When you are in an office, you have you know that you have to arrive at 9. Right. You have a lunch at 12.
Structure.
And structure. And what is very difficult in this job is you don't have any structure. You do what you want, and the more difficult is you don't know exactly when. You have no one to tell you, yes, you did a good job, thank you, or please do it again. No, in fact, here nobody tells you anything, so you have no structure and no tools to know if it's good or not, except of course your feelings. So I decided very soon to create some structures. So at 9, I tried to begin to work, and every day on the same project, the morning, because when you are a writer, you have the project you are working currently,
Yeah.
and but you also have other projects. You know that, for instance, you wrote a script last month, and then now a drawer is working on the script, but is calling you because you want to be sure if the characters is here or here. Or I don't know. He sends you some storyboard, and he would like to have your opinion about the storyboard. Well, you have many things to do, and sometimes to speak to a very nice guy like you. So you have many things to do. So, and if you are not, if you don't pay enough attention, you're gonna spend your day doing many things and very pleasant things, but your script is not going to progress.
Yeah.
So, well, I decided that every morning I had to work on the same script until it's done. And then at lunch I try to meet people in my business or area. It could be publisher, drawers, or friends. Just to have a social life, because one of the most difficult thing in my work is not to have a social life.
Right.
You write, you work alone, and in the afternoon I use this period to read documentation, or to work on the other projects, or if I have time, I try to carry on my script coming from the morning.
So is it an 8-hour day? Is it do you go, it's 9 to 5?
No. In general, I finish at 7:30. But it's also different between to be at Barclays and to write. Just the word work hasn't the same meaning.
Yeah.
Because what is it to work for me? Sometimes I'm watching a movie, and my wife asks me, "What are you doing?" And I answer, "I'm working." And of course she's laughing, and she's a doctor, and in general I answer her, when you are talking, with one of these kids, your patient, you are just talking with them. And what are you doing? I'm working. So you see, when you talk with kids, you are working. So when I'm watching a movie, I'm working. And it's a very special life. Because when you haven't done it, it's very hard to understand the meaning of this word work. So to me, I don't know today, when I'm holidays, I love holidays when I have nothing to do, because it's exactly when I have nothing to do that I'm going to find an idea. So, when I am on the beach, or swimming, maybe I'm working or maybe not.
Yeah. 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 A Hollywood writer just told me recently that, his wife thinks that he stares out the window for a living.
Yeah. And when 1 year or 2 years ago, I have a little daughter, and the teacher asked her, "What's your father doing?" And she answered, "In the morning he's going to work, and he's going at the cafe, because I write in a cafe." So.
So you still do that? You write in?
Yeah, every morning. Yeah, every morning I am in the same cafe.
So they know you there, and you go. Oh yeah, the same thing.
Same seat, same table, same coffee, every day.
Wow.
Yes, I need this routine, and to be honest, I need to be in a coffee, because when I'm here, it's nice. I feel good here, but maybe I feel too good. And imagine that it's morning, everything is silent. You just hear the bamboos outside, And then you have, to write stories when there is a major conflict or people who are fighting, and it's not the place to. I need, energy. And energy is from location where there is a noise or people or, I don't know, energy is in the air. And here it's too calm.
You do the same thing that Neil Gaiman does.
Wow.
The same. And I was shocked because he had, when Ocean at the End of the Lane came out, he said, do you want to hear some of the new book great. And he takes out this beat up notebook. It's all rolled up, and he opens it, there's things sticking out of it. And, is that how you write your books? Oh yeah. All of them. He goes into cafes, he sits on park benches, and he draws and writes and does all his things. He said, I do that. I'm writing about people. I need to see people all around me for reference. And then once I'm done with my story, once I get to the keyboard, I'm just transcribing.
Yeah.
It's
the easy part.
Yes.
Yes, it's really the easy part. Because you have two parts, in this way. First part is very pleasant. It's, ideas and solutions are coming to you. It's really great. When they are coming like this, it's like a drug. Yeah, it's really like a drug. Like a drug, because when you don't have it, you are être en manque. Je sais pas comment on pourrait dire ça. Yeah, you are missing it. But that's the first part. But the second part is when you have to find ideas. You have to look for them. And that's a hard part. And in this hard part, when you are in a nice office with your computer, internet, your books, your movies, your phone, you will have always better to do than to find these ideas. Yeah. So you have to be I have to be in a place where there is nothing else to do except writing. So you have to write. And this solution was given to me by Jean Van Damme. Jean Van Damme had a very structured planning. Planning, and he really forced him to follow it, because he said, sometimes it's so hard. If you are not obliged to write, you will prefer to do anything but write. Not all days, but sometimes. So that's why there is such a structure. Now,
you've done, screenwriting as well. And I know that you did a film, you adapted. It was really interesting. There was a TV show that you turned into a film.
Yeah.
That must have been very difficult to do. I mean, to have to take all of the episodes of this beast of a show and compress it into one story.
Yeah. What was helping is that so this TV show was called The Tiger Squad, and the story was police unit at the beginning of the 20th century.
The first motorized.
Yes, the French motorized police unit. So, and the TV show was procedural. So it was easier to write one story. If it had been serialized, it would have been very more difficult. But so I wrote it with my friend Fabien Nury, and we decided to go back to the roots of this story. I mean, his story, and to try to make it as a detective story, a black detective story. I don't know if you say it, black detective story. So it was funny because it was our first movie experience, screenwriting first experience. So, but it was a mix between history, the real history, and adventures, and very interesting police squad, and characters I was watching when I was kids too, like these comics.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience.
Were you always interested in history, studying history, historical stories? The reason why I say this is looking at your body of work. There's a lot of actual references to all kinds of historical things in your work. Obviously well researched. Whether it's something, an actual a battle that happened at a certain place at a certain time, or a certain type of submarine, that actual certain type of submarine from that time. Is that passionate for you, the study of history and trying to put it into your work?
Yeah, I really love history, of course, because there is so many stories in history that are so incredible that I'm fall in love with the stories. So, but there is something very special related to the fact that I'm French. It is that we are here in a country where everywhere you go, you have a motorway. You have everything is very secured. In fact, in France, I know that some American people think so. It's dangerous to come here, but it's exactly the contrary. We are in a very, very safe place. And problem is that when you live in a country where everything is safe. I mean, as you know, we have social insurance. We have pension at 60. We have, everything is very safe for us in France. And that's good. I mean, it's very pleasant to live here. But as you know, a good story is when you have problems. And for instance, conflict. And conflict. And you can imagine a story with a huge range in France. Why? Because it's not possible. For instance, everywhere your cell phone is working, but if you want, for instance, to do a slasher, and you are in America, you can do it because, you're going to try your cell phone. Oh my God, no, it's not working here. It's not possible here. When you want to do, for instance...
Is that true? It's not possible here?
Yeah. Maybe you would find an exception, but in general, they are working everywhere. For instance, you couldn't do Breaking Bad in France. You know why? Because why Walter White accepts to become a drug dealer or drug cook? Because he hasn't enough money to pay for his cancer.
Yes.
That's not possible in France. If you have cancer, they pay for everything. So I'm living in a very good place to live, but not to tell stories.
Well, you can tell a parallel world story where France is nothing like that.
Yeah,
France is more like America.
No, so you could say, okay, but we have stories in France, people in a flat and they are depressed because, their wife is cheating with... Okay.
Right.
So, okay,
it's a universal problem.
Yes, but we are specialists, of stories in apartments. But it's not my kind of stories. When you grew up with this, you don't want to write this kind of story.
Sure.
So I want to write stories with mythology. So if I was British, for instance, it would be great because I would have, the Victorian mythology and mythology with, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and so on and so on. But I'm French. So what do I have to create mythology? History. That's why I create a major part of my stories in history because there is place for adventures. If you are in the Middle Age in France, there you have big conflicts and big problems. Yeah. Okay? So that's why, maybe except one or two, all my stories takes place in the US, like, Sanctum, or Red One, or in the past, or future, but never in France.
Fascinating.
Today. Never in France. Today.
Well, maybe you'll just write a love story at some point where, it's just all about love and conflict of love and people walking around the city. And
I have one
Smoking
project.
cigarettes.
To be honest, I have only one project that could take place in France. Only one, because it is about education. That's another story.
It means that you're always doing research.
Yeah, but it's really helping because in one hand you have your book or your movie, which one you are doing your research, and in the other hand you have your pen and you write because wow, they did that. Incredible. That would be a good scene. Oh, they did another good scene, and so on, so on. So when you are doing your research, you are helping yourself.
You mentioned Sanctum, and I've got to tackle it because I know it was a very successful book for you, and for good reason.
Thank you.
Really wonderful. And I have to imagine that one of the things that people really responded to here in Europe was that it was a different type of format than what they're used to. It's a very cinematic format. It is, you jump into that story and it is go, go, go. There's a ticking clock right when you get to the second page. It seems like a lot of the graphic novels that I've been reading here and a lot of the research that I've done on them, there are a lot of stories that are ruminative, or they sort of meander a little bit, or they're dialogue heavy, just people talking. It's not so much, okay, if we don't do this thing, the world will end. So Sanctum is sort of like that. It's an action movie, but it's also Lovecraft, the horror element of it. And you mixed in a lot of different types of genres all together in one, which is very difficult to do. That's really hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And a lot of characters with, I didn't do any research into it at all. I just sat down and read it. I had never read it before. So I sat down and I read it, without, and being a child of the 70s, and a cinephile and all of that. For me, I was getting references all over the place, likenesses of the characters and references to different movie scenes where I went, oh, wait a minute. That calls back to a scene in a specific movie. And it was all over the story. Question for you, is this something that you had planned for a long time? Was it something that you had been, I've always wanted to do a story where I put all of this stuff into one thing? Or was it just happened organically that it came out as you were writing?
First of all, I should say that I wrote it when I was quite young. I was, I think, 25 or 26. So to me, now I find it's pretty young, for a writer. And it's also funny because when you mention, many characters, many genre, and so on. Today, I'm teaching in a art school in France, and one of the first.
You're teaching writing?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm teaching writing, and one of the first things I say to my students is, don't, especially when you write for comics, don't use too many characters and don't mix a genre. So you have seen what I've done. Don't do it.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And if I met me at 25,
yeah,
and if I was explaining to me what I want to do, I would say, okay, guys, just pick up one genre, and you have, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 or 10 characters. Just pick 3 or 4, okay, not more. But it's a difference between being, young and maybe older. Is you have so much energy, passion. You want to put everything you like in one book, and that was exactly the case. I think like you, I was an Abyss fan or a Predator fan,
yeah,
and James Cameron fan, and so on and so on. As well, I wanted to have all of this in the story, and one day, I remember this very, very clearly this day. I was in Sri Lanka, And for holidays, it was a very heavy and stormy night. I couldn't sleep. And a friend of mine, Mathieu Loffret, which is also a writer and a drawer.
Yeah, and you've been working together for a very long time. How many years have you known each other?
Yeah, since the beginning. I mean, when I began to write the Third Testament, I met him in a Comic-Con in Paris.
Yeah.
So we are friends now for maybe 20 years. And at this period, he was working on a movie for Christophe Gans, French filmmaker. And this movie was about 20,000 Leagues Under Sea. And he made just an image for him. Guys arriving on a very mysterious city. And so I was in Sri Lanka, this very strange night. And I couldn't open the light turn on the light in my room because my wife was sleeping. And I tried, to read with my, small lamp. And I am just before this image that Mathieu sent me, I close my eyes, between sleep and and storm. And step by step, this story is coming, not in the details, of course, but the main images, the main feeling, and the premises, and then all begins for Sanctum. So it was not planned, as you say. It was just a young guy with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of films in mind, trying to mix them with his own nightmares and desires.
Are you telling your students? Because if you tell your students don't do what I did, it's easy for a student to go, yeah, but it worked. It was a big success. I don't understand why you're telling me not to do it.
Now I explain, for instance, it's very simple. For instance, the first was is you don't have enough panels and enough pages, the more characters you have, the less room you have, so less space you have to deal with them.
Yeah.
So I never say don't do that. In general, I say if you do that, you have to be prepared for this, and that would be the consequences. So if you want to deal with the consequences, no problem.
Yeah.
I don't decide what is good or not good.
Yeah.
And so that's why I decided to make these comics, because I don't really knew the problems. So I tried to do it.
Do you teach them the hero's journey? I mean, are you doing that sort of what the American in America that is the go-to? Yeah. The hero's journey, Joseph Campbell.
Of course,
it is it's the accepted way of doing it. And when you take apart every movie, Hollywood movie, it's pretty cut and dry. The reluctant hero, and he leaves his town to go and find and over the course of the time discovers who he is, and then meets the wizard in the cave, and then accepts who he is and vanquishes the foe and goes home. So
I love it. I just love it.
Are you teaching that to them?
Yes, okay. Not only. I mean, I love Joseph Campbell's work. I love, all, this guru you have in US like Truby or Robert McKee. I love Robert McKee. And I think for us in Europe, I think they would be so useful, because now it's different. But when I began to write, there was no teaching class. There was only a writing class. Sorry, there was only a university, and at university in France, you don't learn how to write. You learn to analyze the writing. Oh, he's doing this because that, and if in this panel they put the characters here and not here, it's because it's very interesting, but it doesn't help you to write. And so for many years, I tried to find ways to help me to write better. this system, or this classes like, Truby, Joseph Campbell, and all of these guys, is very, very useful, but it's not enough. And they say it.
Yeah.
You have to, I think what is very interesting, in my work is that you have to be interested in everything. Philosophy, psychology, history, and people, and religion, everything, because everything will feed your story. And if you learn how to watch the word, when you're a writer, you try to, for instance, I learn my student to speak a new language, the subtitle language. I ask him, do you speak subtitle? And very often, what is he talking about? And I try to show them what is it to speak subtitle. So for instance, I take one sequence in a Kramer versus Kramer, the American title. Yeah. I said, okay, what are they saying? They are saying blah, 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 blah. And I said, do you really think they are saying that? No, they are saying, and I'm talking subtitle. So you have, when you watch the word as a writer, you try to listen to the subtitles. And when you see people, you try not to see them, but to see what there is inside, and so on and so on. So what I really teach is to watch the word as a writer. When you want to do that, you have to learn what Robert McKee or Truby and Campbell say, but many different other things too.
Yeah, to learn everything so you know what to throw away.
That's what Robert McKee says. If you want to be an author, you have to make choices. If you want to make choices, you have to get different options.
The Blast Off podcast is produced by the Colonel, Jeff Fox, Scott Tipton, and me. Original music is composed and performed by Derek Anthony Gray. You can find more of his musical compositions on his website, DerekAnthonyGray.com.
For more information about anything you've heard us talk about today, check us out online at blastoffcomics.com. We have an active Facebook presence, so check us out over there on Facebook. And you can reach us on Twitter at BlastOffComics or on Instagram.
Or you can come by our retail location in North Hollywood in the heart of the Arts District, 5118 Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood, just 2 blocks south of Magnolia. See you soon.